Welcome to this factual explainer. Before we proceed, we must state that this video is for informational purposes only. This report analyzes a recent, highly significant vote in the U.S. House of Representatives regarding the release of investigative files related to the late financier, Jeffrey Epstein. The events discussed are complex and involve sensitive public and political issues. We strictly adhere to all platform policies, focusing only on public facts, avoiding graphic details, hate speech, harassment, or unverified claims. In a recent display of extraordinary bipartisan consensus, the U.S. House of Representatives overwhelmingly approved the Epstein Files Transparency Act. The measure mandates the release of federal investigative files connected to the case. The final vote in the House was 427 in favor to 1 against. The single dissenting vote immediately drew national attention, not only for its isolation but for the political profile of the lawmaker who cast it, Republican Representative Clay Higgins of Louisiana. This report will explore the facts of the vote, the stated rationale for the dissent, and the public background of the congressman who stood alone on this issue. 1. The vote and the context of near unanimity. The legislative effort to compel the public release of the Epstein files, held by agencies like the Department of Justice, was years in the making. Advocates, including survivors and lawmakers from both political parties, argued that the full public disclosure of these files was essential for accountability, transparency, and justice. The legislation that reached the House floor, the Epstein Files Transparency Act, was passed by an overwhelming margin that spanned the political spectrum. Of the 427 votes in favor, 216 were cast by Republicans, highlighting the cross-party consensus on the urgency of transparency in this case. The measure then moved swiftly to the Senate, which also approved it via unanimous consent, clearing the way for the bill to be sent to the president for his signature. This near-unanimous outcome was anticipated to be a moment of full political alignment. However, the one vote of dissent cast by Representative Clay Higgins immediately broke that consensus. This lone no vote served to underscore a critical tension inherent in the process of releasing sensitive government records. The conflict between maximum public transparency and the imperative to protect the privacy and safety of individuals who may be mentioned in the documents but are not criminally implicated. The purpose of the legislation, according to its supporters, is to bring to light all relevant facts about the late financier's alleged criminal network and the official handling of the case. Conversely, the singular dissenting view highlighted the fear that without sufficient safeguards, a broad release of raw investigative data could inadvertently cause harm to innocent people. We will delve deeper into the stated reasons for this objection shortly. The rarity of such a split vote on a widely supported measure made the single dissenter the subject of immediate scrutiny. 2. The rationale for dissent, protecting the innocent. The reason behind Representative Higgins' solitary vote was articulated by the congressman himself in public statements, including a post on the platform X. His opposition was not, according to his own stated position, against the concept of oversight or investigation, but specifically concerned the legal structure and potential consequences of the bill as written. Fact: Congressman Higgins cast the lone no vote against the legislation. Fact: In his public explanation, the congressman stated he had been a principled NO on this bill from the beginning. Opinion/claim: Stated by Higgins, he claimed the bill abandons 250 years of criminal justice procedure in America. The core of his argument centered on the potential for the broad release of investigative files to reveal and injure thousands of innocent people, including witnesses, individuals who provided alibis, and family members. He argued that a general release of raw investigative data, even to media, would allegedly result in innocent people being hurt because their names, though not criminally implicated, would become public. It is important to note that this concern was not unique to the dissenting congressman. House Speaker Mike Johnson and other lawmakers also voiced similar worries about the need to protect the privacy of victims and unimplicated individuals. However, the Speaker and the majority ultimately voted for the bill in support of what they termed maximum transparency. Fact: Supporters of the bill, including its sponsors, have maintained that the legislation already includes adequate safeguards, such as provisions for redactions, specifically to prevent the release of sensitive identifying details related to victims, their families, and witnesses. The bill's text, as passed by the Senate, includes explicit instructions regarding permitted withholdings and prohibited grounds for keeping information secret. Fact: The legislation explicitly prohibits withholding information based on embarrassment, reputational harm, or political sensitivity. Fact, it permits redactions for information that contains personally identifiable information of a victim or child witness, the publication of which would constitute a clearly unwarranted invasion of personal privacy. Representative Higgins indicated that he would support the bill if the Senate were to amend it to properly address privacy of victims and other Americans, who are named but not criminally implicated. However, the Senate passed the House version by unanimous consent without making any changes, thereby sending the original text to the president's desk. The congressman's vote, therefore, rested on his interpretation that the current legislative language was insufficient to protect uninvolved individuals from the consequences of public disclosure. 3. Profile of the dissenting member, Representative Clay Higgins. To understand the lone dissent in the context of the legislative body, it is helpful to examine the background and political history of Representative Clay Higgins. Fact, Clay Higgins represents Louisiana's 3rd Congressional District, having served since 2017. Before entering politics, Higgins had a career in law enforcement. He served in various capacities, including the U.S. Army and multiple local police and sheriff's departments. He gained significant public recognition through a series of dramatic, tough-talking Crime Stoppers videos. These videos, which went viral online, became a key factor in launching his political career. The congressman is publicly identified as a strong supporter of President Trump and is considered one of the most conservative members of the House, often aligning with the far-right wing of the Republican Party. His public statements and actions throughout his career have frequently garnered national attention, sometimes leading to controversy. His time in law enforcement included facing several alleged misconduct complaints. Fact, he resigned from one position at the St. Landry Parish Sheriff's Office in 2016 following backlash over one of his hardline anti-crime videos. In Congress, his outspoken style has continued. During a period of widespread protests in 2020, he posted a message on a social media platform that allegedly threatened the use of force against armed protesters. Fact, the platform later removed the post for violating its rules on violence and incitement. Regarding the COVID-19 pandemic, fact, Congressman Higgins was openly skeptical about the virus and its origins. Unconfirmed claim, stated by Higgins. He claimed that the virus was created and weaponized by the Chinese Communist Party, a claim for which no public evidence has ever been provided. Following the events of January 6, 2021, at the U.S. Capitol, unconfirmed claim, stated by Higgins claimed that alleged ghost buses carried undercover agents or provocateurs to spark the violence. Fact, this claim has never been supported by evidence. More recently, in 2024, the congressman faced backlash after making allegedly offensive comments about Haitian immigrants. Fact, he referred to Haiti as the nastiest country in the Western Hemisphere. Fact, he was confronted by members of the Congressional Black Caucus, and subsequently deleted a social media post related to unsubstantiated claims about Haitian immigrants consuming pets, stating he was referring specifically to gang members, not the entire Haitian community. His personal life, according to the article, includes being the 7th of 8 children, an Army veteran, and a resident of Port Barre, Louisiana. Fact, he has been married 4 times. This history of taking politically outspoken positions, often at the periphery of the established political center, provides a context for his decision to stand alone on the vote to release the Epstein Files. His single dissent on a major, bipartisan bill is consistent with his public persona as a lawmaker who is willing to break with party consensus on issues of procedure or principle as he perceives them. 4. Broader political context and future implications. Narrator, the passage of the Epstein Files Transparency Act, in spite of the lone dissenting vote, represents a significant victory for the push for public accountability. The fact that the bill moved forward with such overwhelming support, from the House vote of 427-1 to the Senate's unanimous consent, highlights the immense public pressure on this specific issue. The president's earlier opposition to the bill and subsequent reversal, which cleared the way for his party's support, further underscores the political gravity of the measure. The unified action of Congress now places the responsibility for the final decision squarely on the executive branch. Fact, the president previously indicated he would sign the bill. The legislative branch has now concluded its work on this specific measure. The next steps will involve the executive branch, specifically the Department of Justice, implementing the law once it is signed. This implementation will center on the procedures for reviewing and redacting the files. The core conflict raised by the dissenting vote remains a relevant point in the implementation phase. How thoroughly will the Department of Justice redact the sensitive files to protect the identity of any uninvolved persons? The bill's supporters believe the existing language is sufficient. The lone dissenter and others who voiced similar concerns argue that the bill's language is not strong enough to protect what the dissenter called thousands of innocent people. The act requires the release of documents within a specific timeframe once it becomes law, setting a clock on when the public can expect to see the now mandated disclosures. The eventual release of the files is expected to reignite public discussion about the late financier's network and the full scope of his alleged activities. 5. Conclusion. Narrator. In summary, the Epstein Files Transparency Act has passed both chambers of the U.S. Congress with a near-unanimous show of force, reflecting a deep, bipartisan commitment to greater accountability and disclosure in the long-running Epstein case. The final House tally of 427-1, however, ensures that the lone dissenting vote and the political profile of Representative Clay Higgins will be intrinsically linked to the history of this legislation. His vote, based on the principle that the bill inadequately protects uninvolved individuals from being publicly identified in sensitive files, stands as a singular objection to a process broadly supported across the political landscape. As the bill heads to the president's desk, the focus shifts from the legislative process to the implementation phase. The world will now await the signing of the bill and the subsequent release of documents by the Department of Justice, which will be tasked with balancing the mandate for full transparency with the necessity of protecting individuals mentioned in the investigative records. The journey toward transparency in the Epstein case has been long, and this legislative action marks a decisive step forward. We will continue to follow the process of this bill's enactment and its subsequent implementation with calm, neutral, and factual reporting.